Now, all over the world, the issue of wage and employment is always at the front burner. Whether a country's economy flourishing or weak, the issue of wages is always important because when people work, they expect to earn a wage. So, at any given point in time, this is an issue that will always come up for discussion. A living wage is very important to the livelihood of Nigerian workers and their families. Oftentimes, people look at a worker as an individual, but the livelihood of a worker goes beyond him or herself because it extends to the family. The wage a worker earns a month has multiple uses and impact. As workers were celebrated yesterday, the 1st of May, the world over, this morning we'll be taking a look at that conversations and issues that are now on the front burner as regards the Nigerian worker. We have Professor Sam Amadi, a legal practitioner, administrator, public affairs analyst, and also a lecturer at Bayes University, who joins us for more perspectives on this subject. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Just to correct, I'm no longer at Bayes. I'm now the director of Abuja School.
All right. Apologies. Apologies for that mix-up. That would have been a mix-up from the producer. But let's take a look at the issues at stake at the moment. We saw the president-elect in his statement giving assurance to Nigerian workers for a living wage and not a minimum wage. And this is coming at a time when we are talking about high debt profile for Nigeria. We are talking about revenue generation at stake. We are also looking at the removal of fuel subsidy, which is a major issue for the Nigerian Labour Congress, even though we've seen an increase of about 40% for federal civil servants and the rest of them. How practical is this at this point in time? And how, generally would you say that Nigerian workers have fared so far in the past 8 years?
Well, let me start with the last part of that question. I think they have fared badly, in my view, because of obvious economic crisis, not just national, global. Okay, so we have got 2 recessions, we've got a pandemic, that created slowdown in economic development. So it has associated impact on wages and livelihoods and employment. So those are the challenges we have. The federal government has tried to deal with these challenges, but I guess maybe the workers will say not as much as expected. So workers have suffered in terms of real wage. If you look at inflation and how much salaries have increased, that means the Nigerian worker today is worse off than it was, even if you take today's minimum wage. So that's one aspect of well-being. We've seen a very high food inflation, also rising from the issues, the global economic meltdown, issues around the Ukraine and Russia war has also further increased price of staples like wheat and all that. So the overall impact of this, the aggregate impact, look at the MBS food inflation statistics, it shows that it's going up. And what that means is that at the end of the day, the average Nigerian worker spends more through taking care of basics, that they have less to save, less to deal with health and education. So today, with energy costs, fuel crisis, government is subsidizing, the government wants to pull out. In Abuja Metropole, we're paying about 108 something to a liter. If you move across and leave Abuja to the east or the north and far out of Abuja, you're paying close to 250 naira per liter. So workers in those areas are seeing higher transport costs. These are associated impact of the economy and policies at the economic level. So in every sense of the word, workers are not better off than before. All these faults are not because of government failure, but of course because of the failure of economic policy to keep step with changes in the global economy.
All right, Dr. Amadi. All right, Dr. Amadi, the president-elect has promised a living wage. In about 27 days, he will assume office, and he's going to be expected to walk his talk. What do you think should be the considerations in arriving at a living wage? in today's Nigeria?
Very good question. I think the first consideration is, of course, the new government should do a cost-benefit analysis and look at inflation generally. Then look at two things: the inequality within different grade of workers in the public service should be examined. You see, the problem with wages is that oftentimes we look at the impact. How much will you spend to give workers, let's say, 50,000 naira minimum wage? Would cost so much and so much. But if you look at savings from waste, for long, we're talking about cost of governance. We should reduce cost of governance, improve salaries and emolument. So what you should be looking at is how much has inflation, foreign exchange, eaten into the real wage, the real take-home of Nigerian workers. That's one. Two, you should be looking at the Human Development Index, that because Nigerian workers are not well paid comparatively, they are not able to procure for themselves those essential goods, social-economic goods that they need to be more productive, they need to be focused. I was chairman of NEC. We gave our staff generous mortgage, and all of them have houses. It reduced corruption and improved productivity. So the new government should not just focus on the number, should focus on the benefits of this wage. I think that if you look at the Scandinavian countries, look at Asian countries that are doing well economically, wages are rising with increase in general prices. Wages are also improving to give workers greater patriotism and greater sense of productivity. That's why in some of these Asian countries, it's actually more profitable. You're paid more in the public sector than the private sector. Why? Because you need to be paid well, be more productive, and that productivity will unlock economic growth for the country. I think that the new government should not, save pennies and lose pounds. They should care more about how do we improve the productivity of workers by helping them to have more than a living wage, and therefore help them to be more productive. So for me, it's a win-win. Improve wages and salaries, especially pay as and when due, which is very important. Then you would increase productivity. Again, federal government is doing better than most states. Most states are not even paying at all. At least the federal government continues to pay, even if the wages are no longer able to help workers live meaningful life. But at least they are paid. So federal government can say, we are doing better, we are not owing. Most states are owing. So the new government should also have a way of helping states or encouraging them to prioritize workers' salary. I mean, it's wrong for workers to own 8 months, 6 months, 3 months by some state governors when those governors are paying themselves and are not reducing even on their own cost as a government. So I think that the challenge will be very steep for the new government. But if they have the right approach, look at the numbers properly, and look at the value behind the numbers. To pay Nigerian workers 50,000 naira will be a lot of cost. But in the medium to long term, it will be a gain because you will see improvement in productivity. And then workers themselves will be under pressure to be more productive instead of them collect supplement wages and pay.
Okay, Prof, for some people, this has always been a case of where the government gives you with one hand and it takes with another. So I'm saying it with respect to the issues of inflation and how it has whittled down whatever effect that wages increase or salary increase is meant to have on the lives of workers and the standard of living for them. So you take, for instance, salaries have been increased, but alongside all the costs in the the cost of goods in the market and other bills and other expenses rise alongside the increase. So at the end of the day, the desired result is not achieved, which is to improve the living standard of Nigerians. So how do we deal with that really? Is it merely a thing of increasing the wages? What then happens to the other economic elements?
Very good question. Very good question. That's what I say. Why goes chase? The major monetary policy of government is to fight inflation. So the central bank, as the prime monetary agency, will keep its eye on inflation. And one of the ways to fight inflation, food inflation, is to improve food production. Elementary economics. If we're not producing more because of the work of problem of bandits and community clashes, because of drought, climatic impact of climatic change, because of the lack of commitment to agriculture and various policy failures. If we have less production, then there will be still the price of foods will go up. Of course, like I said, the Russian war impacted on the price of staples, wheat and oil. So one of the things government must do, apart from increasing salary to catch up with inflation, is to make sure the inflation is low. We've been unfortunate the last couple of years have rising inflation, especially food inflation, as a result of low production in diverse sense of the word. What government should do is to retool monetary policy to control inflation in a manner that, while controlling inflation, also improving productivity and employment. The second issue is that globally, countries are struggling to keep fiscal stability and viability. We see that wages will keep rising. I mean, you have to index the wages to inflation. Because, for example, when I was NEC chairman, we indexed reduced tariff to inflation, to forex. Because the idea is that you can't ask people to pay the same price for electricity when dollar was changing 150, when it's changing 1700. The same way, you can't expect people to live on 20,000 when dollar is exchanging from changing 150, as at when it's now exchanging maybe 500, 700,000. So all these changes mean you have to reindex the wages to keep up with real price. But again, you have to fight to keep prices low as possible, in a way that you don't have to have inflation from inflation to hyperinflation when everything is going on and the employment is going down, because both the government and private sector cannot keep pace with increase in labor wages. The labor wage is a critical element of economic development. The government will allow labor wages to skyrocket where it's no longer affordable, when you begin to see massive unemployment because people cannot afford to pay those salaries, and those salaries are not worth anything, because even with increase in salary, we are still dealing with increase in prices. Yes.
All right, Prof. Now the government is promising living wage. Who determines this living wage? Because how would you describe the engagement between labor and the government? We have heard allegations where we hear that the workers want a particular thing, but then the labor buckles when they meet with the government due to one reason or the other. So would you say that the labor unions are actually engaging the government properly to get what workers deserve?
Well, wage negotiation is a strategic bargain. In strategy, you look at possibilities. Labor leaders are strategists. Sometimes they make demand. The government cannot pay, and you don't want to shut down government. So sometimes they compromise for greater public good. Sometimes they compromise as a strategic tool of not losing all. But I think that what government should do is to show good faith in bargaining with labor. It's oftentimes government sees it as a win-lose. It should be win-win. We should win for government to procure industrial peace, which is important for larger economic development. And for labor, too, they know that you don't have to push the envelope too far. If you do, government could react in a way that undermines the welfare of workers.
But Prof, we have seen instances, for instance, the 30,000 that was agreed upon, a lot of states are not paying it. And I don't see what the labor has done to get them to pay.
Well, you're right. Labor leadership differs from class to class. The past labor leadership, many people believe, were not strong enough because they are also entangled with the government. Oftentimes, the labor leaders themselves are political. They could be captured. So what we can say, the labor leadership has been politically captured. But it looks like the new labor leadership is coming to be independent. I agree with you. Sometimes labor deliberately sells workers to captivity by failing to stand on those demands that are genuine, affordable, and realistic. And some people are led. And also sometimes government co-opt them. Government buy them off. Government gets them involved in government, and they begin to see the value of protecting government from protecting workers. So it all depends on the character and the quality of leadership at any time. We've seen several labor leaders from Pascal, from Mono down to Wamba and now Jajero. Each leadership is defined by the context and by the character of the labor president. NLC or TC. So I would argue that maybe the last president was not so decisive, was not too courageous, and probably did not stretch to protect labor. But hopefully, the new president could, focus on labor welfare. Don't be too obstructionist. Don't be too quarrelsome. Don't fight government, but be very committed and purposeful in pursuing the welfare of workers, because that's essentially why you're a labor leader. A labor leader is not the minister of labor, it's not the speaker, it's not the parliament, it's not the president. His constituency is workers. His constituency is the working class people. So oftentimes, labor leaders mistake their mission and mandate and focus more on what's not their vision. Their focus is to pursue the interests of workers within the larger interests of the Nigerian people. And once they keep their eye on that ball, they do well. But if they begin to think that they are politicians, that they are now government officials, begin to enjoy too much of the perks of public office, ride the red carpet, attend meetings in Villa, meet with the Dangotes and all the big shots, then they begin to lose focus and passion for the well-being of ordinary work. That's it.
All right. Well, also another issue will be how other workers in other sectors will also benefit from other interventions of the federal government as regards the increase in salaries and wages. So recently we heard the story about the plans to increase workers' salary, federal civil servants, by 40%. That was to have taken effect by April, and we understand that some have actually seen that increase, but in some other sectors, we've not seen that increase in the academia, for instance. We understand SANU and the rest of that, and then some in the medical sector also raising alarm as to why they are not part of this. So we are seeing that some people are not really carried along and all that. And at the end of the day, we are all in the same economy. We all go to the same market. If subsidy is eventually removed today, all workers will be going to the filling stations to buy fuel, So when you think about these things, how does it, affect the whole idea about increasing wages and the living standard of workers? Hello? Hello? All right, it seems we've lost Professor Sam Amadi there on all the things that we needed to hear from him. But I mean, the conversation about May Day has been on, and yesterday we talked about, the Nigerian workers. We had the spokesperson of the Nigerian Labour Congress here in the studio, Benson Upa, who gave us some insights to all these conversations. But I'm particularly interested in how the whole removal of subsidy is going to take effect, and this increase that we have seen now, whether or not it will not be consumed by all the rises that we're expecting to see.
And
because certainly there's going to be a rise in the cost of things.
When they said they were going to suspend subsidy removal, I noticed that a lot of people were excited. But I said to myself, well, this is temporary, because whether we like it or not, at some point this is going to go, and we'll have to face reality. It's sad that we lost him, because I was going to ask, because there are lots of people who say that, how do you blur the line between perks and allowances for political office holders? And okay, it appears as if we have Professor Amadi back. Prof, are you there?
So what I was saying is that the lack of harmony in the wages structure is a problem. And so there will be a knock-on effect. If you increase the wages of a category of the working class and not the other, you create disaffection. Look at those in the agencies, commissions, central bank, maybe the NCC, the FRS, and far more than those in the line ministry. Even among line ministries, some in the agencies are paid far less. So it's really it has been a problem, and that's why the Wages and Salaries Commission keep struggling to bring down the wages of those regulators. The logic of that disparity was that some of these agencies are dealing with high economic policy making, where they have to come close to the private sector. because of the problem of corruption. We pay people in regulators more, pay people in central bank, tech, NCC, FRS, we pay them more,
right,
NMPC, because they are generating income and they are also playing with private sector. And you want to attract the best and the brightest. But in so doing, you create resentment, you create envy, you create crisis with those in the private sector, those in other line ministry, who feel that, look, their services are not valued. So I think that government should, walk that line, carefully. We need to pay some people more because their work is more
There's also
challenging.
another line a lot of people are talking about. That is the line between the allowances and perks of political office holders and that of civil servants. There are some Nigerians that feel that if there's a reduction in what political office holders take, maybe money will be more available to cater more for civil servants who actually work for about 30 years before they retire.
Yeah, let's be very clear here. If you look at the real salary of political officers, the minister, Ngige said he earns about 120,000. So the salaries are not too big. But the perks, the privileges they take, for example, many of them have access to 2-3 cars. They have access to everything. So in the real sense, they don't earn so much, but their allowances and perks are too many. I think that we should reduce the disparity between civil servants and public officers. In Asia and other economies that are less corrupt, actually, public office doesn't earn more than civil servants. That's not why a minister should earn more than a head of service, a permanent secretary, or a director. That's not why a senator should earn more than a director. The director is the height of public service. Therefore, it should benchmark. Everybody coming to public service should earn reasonable range. The only problem is that because we are a corrupt country, some of those appointments come with the notion of wealth creation. You see people in the village, if they invite a PAMSEC and invite a minister, they expect a minister to donate 10 million to the community hospital or the community project, and expect the PAMSEC or director probably to give 50,000. So public expectation about public office fits into this idea that those people who are appointed to this office are entitled to a lot more money, and therefore we extract more from them. That is why people hold big parties to celebrate being a minister. But if you look at the real salary of a minister, it's pitiable. It's not that big. But because they surround themselves with unaccountable perks and allowances, they have so much, they make so much money, they take so much from the system, but the system is not well defined. So when we're going to have leadership in this country, that we cut to the bone, so that every public expenditure is receivable and reimbursable and retirable. You have to retire it, you have to show what it is for. Like in the US, the parliamentarian, for example, what we pay our parliamentarian. It's not a salary. The whole money for running the office of the legislator is paid to the man, and he spends as he likes. But in the UK, you have to receipt for every travel, every expenditure. Your salary is defined. The rest has to be receipted for and accounted for because it's public for.
Okay, Prof, finally, just by way of conclusion, each time we talk about wage increase, it's mostly as if we are referring to people working in government circles, in the public sector, and the rest of them. But there are also other categories of workers who are in the private sector. Yesterday, we had a bit of an argument with the spokesperson of the NLC who said, well, there's a difference between those who are working in the organized private sector and the informal sector. But whatever sector it is, these are workers as well, and they are also deserving to feel the effect of whatever changes or whatever increase that is being made, as regards wages. So what do you make of how we deal with this? How do we deal with these differences?
Okay, 3 points. One is that the government pays for its own workers and don't tell the private sector who to pay. But as a minimum wage, that's why they have a tripartite negotiation. Government, labor unions, and the private sector. Now, but the private sector can pay a lot more. So you can have a law that says nobody will pay below this level, private or public. But the economics will argue that we should allow flexibility in labor relations so that the private sector can pay more or pay less dependent, but government owns responsibility to ensure that its minimum wage applies across board. So there's a minimum wage, that 30,000 applies to parties, between private, public, and workers. The other issue is the informal sector. The informal sector, by definition, is a sector that is not eligible to regulation. It's informal, not in the formal sector. One of the things we are doing with poverty across the world, India, Bangladesh, is to find a way to regulate the informal sector without over-regulating it. So, for example, there are people who are prepared to take 10,000 to work as cleaners in some office instead of 0. Now, if you say that for you to have anybody employed to clean, they should pay 40,000. The result of it in economics, when you over-regulate minimum wage, you create unemployment. Because some people can't afford to hire anybody, pay 40,000. They will say that daughter should clean their house. But if you say, okay, you can pay 10,000. So somebody may feel that 10,000, I can clean somebody's house and earn money. So I think we should not over-regulate the informal sector.
All right.
We should make sure it's not violated. People are not treated badly, like domestic helps and all those brutality, but allow flexibility in terms of pricing so that people can earn below minimum wage in informal sector.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Professor Sam Amadi, legal practitioner and public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning and sharing your perspectives with us.
Thank you very much.